What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. UFC Fight Night. Yadong versus Henry Cejudo is this weekend, and I'm here to break down my picks, give my predictions on what I believe is going to happen. I think that this is a good week of fights, and we're gonna start with the with the co-main event. We're gonna start with the prelims and move up to the main event, breaking down what we think is gonna happen during each fight. Starting off with Modestas Bukauskas versus Rafael Caquera. Rafael Caquera's debut against Ivo Aslan was horrific. He just shelled up against Ivo after taking, I think it was like a couple shots, and then just lost. Modestas Bukauskas is actually a decent fighter. He's got some decent technique. His stand-ups will get a bit better. Sure, he is a bit chinny. But, I mean, you could say that about almost anyone at this weight class, including Caquera. I think Bukauskas is the better fighter of the two. I'm going to be picking him by decision to end up winning the fight. Caquera could come in and knock him out, but I just don't see that really being the more likely of the two factors. Nursultan Ruzaboyev versus Eric Makoniko. I have no idea who Makoniko is. He seems to be coming. This is his debut. He's coming off of 5-win win streak, all against guys who don't have the best record. Versus Nursultan's last fight was against Joaquin Buckley, and Buckley ended up beating that ass and really exposing Ruzaboyev. But now looking back, that's not that bad of a loss, seeing who Buckley is. I think this is going to be a fairly easy one-sided fight for Nursultan. Don't be surprised to see him maybe get a submission finish. I genuinely don't know Makoniko, though. I know he does have a couple submissions here, but we're gonna say Nursultan just does work on him, beats his ass. It's his debut. He's gonna be scared, or he's gonna have the octagon jitters. Also, he's only beaten up guys who don't have the best record. Although before, Nursultan's doing the same thing, but he's now actually got some wins in the UFC against a guy who's never been here. He's gonna show him the real skill of the UFC, I guess. And he's moving back up to 185 rather than being at 170, which he was the better fighter there. Moving on to Austin Vanderford versus Nikolai Veretnikov. This is actually a pretty decent fight, or pretty close fight. Vanderford has had some wins in Bellator. He's competed against the highest level guys in Bellator, whereas Nikolai has had some losses against like Danny Barlow, who is a very good fighter. Michael Morales is a good fighter. And then he picked up some wins in between in the UFL. Looks like some decent recorded guys, but I don't know. All finishes there. Made it a bit easy. Vanderford's a grappler, if I'm remembering right. Only lost to really the highest level guys outside of Aaron Jeffrey. I really don't know Aaron Jeffrey. They're both older. I'm going to be picking Nikolai. He's going to probably be able to stop the takedowns of Vanderford. Once he does, he's going to punish him, land some big shots, probably get the KO, maybe round 2, I would think. I do think they're around the same level. I just don't think that Vanderford's grappling is going to be what changes it, and that's what he needs to change the fight. That's where he really needs to go to excel and win. Moving on to Ricky Simon versus Javid Basharat. This is actually a very close fight. I think that Ricky Simon has been getting, you know, clowned on for his losses a little too much because he is on a 3-fight losing streak. But, I mean, if you look at who he's lost to, he lost to Vinicius Oliveira, who just beat Said Nurmagomedov, which, great win for him. Mario Batista, who, sure, even though we don't like it, he did what he did to Jose Aldo. So it's a decent loss to still have. And Song Yadong. But before that, he beat Jack Shore, Rafael Assunção. We've got some decent wins, but they were some time ago now. Losing to Amian Zahabi is not the worst thing for Basharat, but the Victor Henry illegal kick to the walls. It's been some time since his last fight. And, you know, Simone has been more on his stuff. I don't know. I know that Basharat's good, and he's a decisionator. Do I think he is going to be able to out-grapple Ricky Simon? I do. I think that Simon has not passed his prime, but I think his tough fights that he's going to win. Fuck it. You know what? I'm picking Simon. I think Ricky Simon's his grappling, his pace will prove to be too much for Basharat. You know, I may look like a fool for picking Ricky Simon, but I just don't believe in the Basharat brothers. I don't think either one of them is that great. Losing to Amian Zahabi is still, it sticks out to me versus, I know Ricky Simon has had 3 losses in a row, but there are just specific losses that stick out to me a little worse. And I don't see Javid being able to do the same physical imposing stuff that maybe Vinicius Oliveira was able to do. And he probably isn't going to have the same level of takedown defense and striking as a Song Yadong. Anyways, moving on to Nick Klein versus Mansour Abdul Malik. Literally, I'm going to be picking what everybody else is. Abdul Malik by round 1 knockout. If you're not picking that, you're picking Klein to just beat him after gassing. I think that Mansour Abdul Malik's going to take a huge step up from where he was in his last fight, and I think that he's going to end up getting a huge knockout of Nick Klein. Moving on to Andre Fili versus Mikel Acosta. Mikel's, I don't know how to say his name. This fucking guy versus Andre Fili. You know, this is one of those fights that is actually very, very close. The level that Andre Fili fights at is typically higher than Costa's fighting level, but I will say the Shailin Nurmagomedov fight, or win, is a very huge win for him in comparison to the Cub Swanson split decision for Fili here towards the end of Cub's career. I'm going to be picking Mikel or Acosta to win by decision. I think that he is the more dangerous of the two fighters. Although Fili does these weird, like, flicky kicks and stuff, and he'll randomly get KOs. I think that Costa's going to be the better fighter. I think he's going to end up winning by decision. He may get a finish, but I think he's the better of the two fighters at this point in their career. And when Andre Fili was on, not on top, but, like, you know, doing his best work, he probably would win the fight, but it's not that time anymore. Speaking of great fights, Ion Cutelaba versus Ibo Aslan. Man, the Cutelaba pick is really, like, sticking out to me that he could use his grappling, but Ion Cutelaba is stupid. But every time it feels like I pick against him, he actually uses his grappling and ends up winning the fight. His fight against Ivan Arslan was pretty close last time, and he did decide to use his grappling in that. I just think that Ibo Aslan, being on whatever sauce he may be on, is going to be able to land the one big shot he really needs to impact the fight in a negative manner for Kutalaba and the, like, yeah. He's going to land one big shot. Kutalaba's going jelly-legged. He may try to wrestle at that point, but it's not going to be enough. I think Aslan, round 1 KO. We'll move on to Alonzo Menifield versus Julius Walker. I did no research on Julius Walker. I don't know who he is. I know that he's got some good wins, some decent wins, and not really great competition. And then there's Alonzo Menifield, who I think lost to Azamat Mirzakhanov. Yeah, and then Carlos Ulberg in his last 2 fights. Beat Dustin Jacoby, but did he? Beat Jimmy Crute by submission. Used his grappling in that fight. I don't know. I can see Menifield getting a win here. I genuinely don't know Julius Walker. It's his debut. He's 6-0. I just assume he's not going to have the experience for this. Not at this level yet. I don't want to pick Alonzo Menifield to win because I don't think he's a good fighter, but I genuinely don't know who Julius Walker is. So he's also, there's a huge age gap. I guess I could see that being a huge benefit towards Julius Walker, but I'm going to go with Menifield by round 1 knockout. He's aggressive. He's stupid. He may actually use his grappling, though. Again, just like with Kutalaba. Moving on to Gene Silva versus Melsik Bagdasaryan. I'm going to be going with who everybody on Tapology is going with, Gene Silva, and I think it's going to be a round 2 knockout. I think that Melsik Bagdasaryan has a pretty decent game, but he did end up getting dropped and then submitted by Josh Kulibau, and that is just something I cannot look past. I know it was some time ago, and he's gotten better, but he still has taken some decent time off coming back against Gene Silva, who is a fucking monster. I've got Melsik doing good in maybe the first round, and then Gene Silva just taking over from the maybe middle of the second round on, or middle of the first round on, starting to pick him apart, landing the KO shot in round number 2. Moving on to Rob Font versus John Matsumoto. This is a tough fight to call. A lot of these fights are pretty tough. They're pretty even. Matsumoto just has not competed at the level of Rob Font, in my opinion. He was able to decision Brad Katona, which is a good victory for him. But I mean, he's only been in the fight or in the UFC for 2 fights. He is one of these contender series guys, but he has not been stepped up to the level of a Rob Font yet. Whereas Rob Font's losses are all against guys who are outside of Chito Vera, the top level of bantamweight. And I can't rate Chito Vera. He's a punching bag. Beating Yanez and beating Kyler Phillips, 2 good wins, 2 good up-and-coming fighters. I think he's going to be able to keep the streak alive of beating these up-and-coming kids who are not quite undefeated, but, I mean, Matsumoto's undefeated, but they were very good prospects and very young prospects. I think Rob Font's going to end up winning by decision. Matsumoto's going to try to use his grappling in the first couple rounds. I think he's going to slow down. Font's going to start picking him apart and taking over the fight from there. I think Font by decision is a very good pick to have here. Moving on to Brendan Allen versus Anthony Hernandez. This is the second time they fought. They fought in the regional scene in the past, and I believe it was Anthony Hernandez winning that fight. I really don't remember, the results, like who actually won and by what, but yeah, it doesn't even have it on here. They've been in the UFC too long now. This is a good fight for Fluffy Hernandez. Brendan Allen's always good for the first couple rounds, but I just think that Fluffy Hernandez being on the level that he's at He's on a run right now too. And sure, he beat all of 30 seconds gasp Michel Pereira, which now looks like a weird win. But hey, I mean, he still was blowing through the middleweight division and then ran into Anthony Hernandez. Brendan Allen's last fight being Nasruddin Imavov. Losing that by decision, not the worst look either. But I think that Fluffy Hernandez's pressure and pace is just going to be too much yet again for Brandon Allen, and I think he's going to end up getting either a third-round TKO, maybe a submission. I'm not really sure if he could pull off, or if he will pull off submitting Brandon Allen, but I think he could make him quit into a submission potentially, like landing enough strikes, and then he just gives up his bag, takes the rear naked choke, and just finishes it. But I'm going to go with third round. I'll pick submission just because I haven't picked submission on this card. We're going to go with third round submission. I think Fluffy's going to break him and then end up submitting him after hurting him a little bit against the cage. Henry Cejudo versus Song Yadong, the main event of the evening. We are going to be picking Triple C to lose this fight. I think that right now Song Yadong, too high of a level of fighter for Henry Cejudo to have to deal with. I think Cejudo's striking level is not anywhere near the level it needs to be to deal with a guy's boxing level that Song Yadong has. I think his wrestling, although he is a gold medalist in the Olympics, has failed in MMA so far. He was only able to really take down Demetrius Johnson and win that fight, even though he didn't win that fight. His grappling level just isn't high enough. If he does get Yadong down, he's just going to get erect and stand right back up. I think that Yadong's going to wear down Cejudo, beat him up, and get a third round TKO. I think that Yadong is just too big, too much, too girthy for Cejudo to handle. And that'll be my picks for this fight. Yeah, for this card. Anyways, I guess we can now move to, how we've been doing on the channel. We're at 63.3% win rate, or pick rate, win rate. The last card we went 7 and 12, or 7 out of 12. Not too bad, not too great, but we now have had two not great cards in a row, 6 out of 12, and then 7 out of 12. But we're gonna be looking to bring that pick rate up. A couple good underdog picks on this fight card, and yeah, I will see you guys later. Tell me how I did on my picks. Insult me, like, comment, subscribe. See ya.